Hey Guru Nation, thank you so much for checking out another video. It really means a lot to me. Make sure you like, subscribe, comment, share. It helps me out with the algorithm. Today I got a question from somebody on LinkedIn. Anybody can contact me there too. Just links underneath the video. Connect with me. I'm on all the social networks. So this is about being a CTA, clinical trial assistant, which is a fairly good entry-level position at a large CRO. And they just want to know what's typical day-to-day of a CTA look like. Now, I have not been a CTA, but many of my students have gone on to become CTAs and I've interviewed them. I've worked when I was a contract CRA with many CTAs in a support role with me. As a site owner and a study coordinator, right now I'm working with numerous CTAs. So I kind of have a decent feel, even though I haven't done it myself. Typical day. So here's the essential functions basically from this particular CRO. Assist the CRAs and regulatory startup team with accurately and updating and maintaining clinical documents like the trial master file. So that sounds like something simple, right? That's actually a lot. So if you look at assisting CRAs and regulatory startup team with startup activities initially, that's all the regulatory document, that's all the essential documents. You need IRB for the site, IRB approval, protocol approval, investigator brochure approval, 1572, financial disclosure forms, CVs, medical licenses. And then every study has its own trainings and vendors, and once you get into the vendors, this is the next thing: accurately updating and maintaining clinical documents and systems. Once you get into the vendors, the average study has about 7 to 8 vendors. You got IRT, you got EDC, you got the lab vendor, you got the ECG vendor, you've got the IRB portal. There's so much. You got to track the site compliance with these things, performance within project timelines. So when it's startup, how is the site doing? Are they ready to be activated? Every day that goes by for an average clinical trial costs $1 million a day for that sponsor. All right, study-wide, $1 million a day is what the sponsor is paying for a clinical trial. So your role as a CTA is to get sites on timeline, get sites on track. When it comes to study startup, it's getting all the regulatory stuff in place. It sounds easy, but it's not, because look, a lot of sites have many sub-investigators on that 1572. So that's a lot of CVs, a lot of medical licenses, a lot of GCPs, a lot of training logs, a lot of financial disclosure forms. Then there's the whole lab. Is the site using a local lab? Because that's going to take some documentation. If they're using a central lab, it's okay, but they still need things like CLIA waivers. They need calibration logs. I mean, we can go really in depth on this video on study startup. Maybe I'll do one next week on study startup from a CRO perspective, what you need to collect and what the time frames should be. So that's that aspect of being a CTA. Then you have assist the clinical team with the preparation, handling, distribution, filing, and archiving of clinical documentation and reports according to the scope of work and standard operating procedures. So this would be things like SAEs. This would be things like SUSARs, suspected unexpected serious adverse reactions. Then you have assist with periodic review of study files for completeness. So that would be things like the essential documents. That would be things like SAE reports. That would be things like IRB approvals. That would be things like training logs. That would be things like deviation logs. That would be things like screening and enrollment logs. There's a lot of logs. As a CTA, I don't think you're doing investigational product accountability. That's the CRA. But you might need to file these logs. Anything the CRA, as a general rule of thumb, anything the CRA collects from the site, a CTA will file in a trial master file. Then you have assist CRAs and regulatory startup team with preparation, handling, and distribution of clinical trial supplies. So here's another thing, and there's supplies are in shortage right now. As a site, I have to really go through when I receive supplies and make sure everything's in there. And they send big boxes, so there's various things in these boxes. Lab kits. Every visit has its own lab kit. How many? When do they expire? You have shipping containers. You have the cooling packages. You have the gel wraps so the labs don't get damaged upon shipment. You have the air bills. You have things like ECG, if you have ECG holters, if you have any wearables, patient reported outcomes, laptops to connect to all these things. All that stuff someone's got to keep track of. And don't expect the coordinator at the site to keep track of that stuff. Coordinator's busy. You need to keep track of it. Coordinator might find out weeks later, hey, when you sent me this shipment, I'm missing XYZ. Where is it? And that's your job as a CTA. Then assist with tracking and management of case report forms, queries, and clinical data flow. So this is like preparing for database lock. This is assisting the CRAs. Okay, did this site, how many open queries do they have? Which ones, can we batch them somehow? Are they all related? I recently had 3 screen failures, guys. That's all I had in one study. As a site, I've had 3 screen failures. I had 130 queries open. Now, 80% of them were the same thing. They were onset of medication. They were most of them related to the ConMeds. So what I did, I had my assistant kind of batch all those things together and say, hey, take care of these. All they want is this date. This is the date that we're going to put for all of them because that's the earliest date that we know. That's the earliest date that we're aware of. So things like that with the EDC, when you have downtime. Now, at these big CROs, sometimes they like to focus like 80% of your activity on regulatory startup and then trial master file maintenance. But when you have like database locks, they want you to contribute to helping with CRF related things. Finally, as a central contact for the clinical team, for designated project communications, correspondence, and associated documentation, may accompany CRAs on site visits to assist with clinical monitoring duties upon completion of required training. Why? They need more CRAs. They want to train. This is why the CTA is such a good role. They want to train you to be a CRA. They need CRAs. That you listen to the fourth quarter 2021 IQVIA earnings call. They said the CEO said they have 80,000 employees and they need thousands more every quarter. They don't just fall out of the sky, CRAs. They're groomed, they're trained. CTA is a great role for that. So that the day-to-day it varies, depends on the needs. And there's a lot of documentation that goes into your communication with sites. Oftentimes your CRA is busy, so you are going to be the main point of contact for the sites when they're missing something, when they need more IP inventory, when they need more labs, when they need butterfly needles. They contact the CTA. All right, so CTA is kind of doing everything like admin and supporting the CRAs and ensuring the sites are up and running smoothly and that the trial master file is being maintained properly. Hopefully this helps. Let me know what other questions you have. Maybe I'll do an entire video on study startup from the perspective of a CRO. Take care, Guru Nation. Like, subscribe, comment, share. Bye-bye.